When your mom yells at you for doing a backflip while holding a knife, it can be pretty aggravating, but instead of using that anger in an unproductive way, it's best to boot up some action games to cope. Here are the top 10 free action games on itch.io you don't know about. Bloodborne PSX is a PS1 style remake of the popular Souls-like game Bloodborne. Before starting, you pick your class type with unique starting stats and customize your character. The game captures the gothic atmosphere of Bloodborne so well, but it's recontextualized in this old school style. Since it's a remake to the opening area of Bloodborne, almost all of the same gameplay elements are present. It has perfectly weighty combat where understanding the enemy attack patterns and knowing when to dodge roll or attack is crucial. Around the interconnected environments, you'll defeat a wide variety of enemies scattered around that drop pickups. These pickups are beneficial in combat as you have health vials that restore your health and Molotovs that deal a lot of splash damage, for example. The game is also very punishing, not because each fight is hard, but because the length between checkpoints is very far. If you're looking for an amazing Souls-like or never got the chance to play Bloodborne, then I recommend Bloodborne PSX. Right-Click to Necromance is a top-down game where you play as a necromancer who can resurrect fallen enemies to control them in an ever-growing army. You start out with a group of small knights and have to go around and pick fights with groups of enemies you think you can beat. Whenever you kill a group of enemies, you can revive them to join your army. The game is all about positioning and picking fights you can win. As time goes on, harder enemies start to appear. You have to be wary of where you pick fights because the other groups roaming around can interrupt your fight so your army isn't focused on one group. There's a good amount of enemy variety with the different knight variations that do melee attacks, the skeleton who's ranged, and the two golem types who smash enemies, knocking them back. If you're looking for an addictive game that'll make you keep replaying it to see how far you can get, then I recommend Right-Click to Necromance. Zero Deaths is a post-apocalyptic action-adventure platformer where you play as PewDiePie in an effort to win the Subbot War. You have a jump and melee attack that you use to platform around levels and defeat enemies. The movement controls and combat feel really good because of the punchy sound effects. Levels have you either gather enough coins or find a specific item to open up the next area. The game has a ton of style and is centered around dead memes and meme characters that drive the absurdly hilarious plot.
And I took a step into the meme cemetery.
The enemies get more varied as you progress, with ones you have to stomp on and enemies that shoot homing missiles at you. The game culminates into a just as absurd final boss fight where PewDiePie fights his dog. If you're looking for a stylish action platformer where you play as PewDiePie, then I recommend Zero Deaths. Mother of Many is a first-person roguelike combat game where you kill hordes of enemies and harvest vegetables. The world is in ruin and your mouse family is struggling for food, so you sacrifice your sister to spawn enemies which grow your crops with their blood. You're armed with a scythe that shoots projectiles. Every time you kill an enemy, they drop XP which is collected to level up. You then pick from one of 3 upgrades. Every time you die, you go back to your farm where you get to plant seeds earned in your last attempt. You can use harvested crops in a soup that gives you stat upgrades before your next run. The one flaw I found is that the game can be kinda broken if you get the jump upgrade too many times, which gives you an extra jump. If you're looking for a gothic roguelike with horde-based combat, then I recommend Mother of Many. Gladihoppers is a 1v1 fighting game where you play as a gladiator fighting through a series of fights. The fighting controls are intentionally imprecise, so the best way to win is by managing your spacing between you and your opponent. There's different types of gladiators, but they're either free or cost money depending on their starting stats. With your chosen gladiator, you go through a series of fights. After every fight, you pick one upgrade, some of which are free and others cost money, until you inevitably die. Managing your money is a key aspect since you have to decide if your current gladiator is worth investing in or if you want to save up for the next one. There are helper characters that give you some sort of advantage for a small fee, like giving you a potion during a battle or paying a spy to hurt your opponent before the fight. If you're looking for a ragdoll gladiator combat game with a strategic upgrade system, then I recommend Gladihoppers. Rotten Parasite is a third-person Souls-like game where you play as a doctor destroying people plagued by an illness called the Blood Parasite. The combat is your typical Souls-like style with weighty attacks that can't be cancelled out of. You have a dodge roll as well for evading enemy attacks, although no energy bar to limit how much you can dodge an attack. The game and its setting are gorgeously decrepit as the snow-covered medieval setting has no life other than the infected monsters trying to kill you. I do wish the game had more enemy types as they're all just the same enemy. The only thing that changes is the amount of them that attack you at once and this big one. If you're looking for a gorgeous Souls-like game with simplistic combat, then I recommend Rotten Parasite. Dead Against Us is a top-down shooter where you survive hordes of zombies while scavenging for loot. Your motorcycle ran out of fuel, so you have to search the suburbs for fuel cans, which you can carry back to refuel your motorcycle. Weaving through the zombie horde is a nice challenge as you have to not take damage and make sure you don't trap yourself. A lot of the loot is useless and just adds to your score, but you can search bodies and find useful loot like guns or health pickups. If you're looking for a simple top-down shooter that'll have you dodging through hordes of zombies, then I recommend Dead Against Us. Station Meltdown is a fast-paced FPS arena shooter where you kill robot enemies with a variety of weapons. Every run you start out with just a pistol, which is precise but relatively weak, but you're able to jump and dodge around rooms with a limited dodge meter. You also have a melee attack which conserves ammo. Every few rooms you'll pick up a new weapon like a machine gun, shotgun, or rocket launcher, changing up your approach to combat. The different enemy types incentivize movement along with health pickups scattered around the arena. I do wish there were more room types though, as you see repeated rooms with the same enemy layouts multiple times if you have a decent run. If you're looking for a fast-paced movement-oriented arena shooter, then I recommend Station Meltdown. Just One Boss is a boss fight game where there's just one boss you fight in progressively harder stages. The battle takes place on a grid-based stage where you move around to dodge the boss's attacks. While moving around the stage, you move over flashing spaces to deal damage. Once you do enough damage, the boss moves on to its next stage that adds in new attacks and mechanics. If you lose all your hearts, you die and have to restart the stage you're currently on. The first two stages are relatively easy, but the last two are quite a challenge, as you're managing a mirrored version of yourself, making it twice as hard to dodge the attacks. Once you beat the boss, you can play again on hard mode, which adds in new attacks and upgrades existing ones. If you're looking for a challenging boss fight game, then I recommend Just One Boss. Vampire Survivors is a medieval-themed top-down action game with roguelite elements. All the characters in the game have a starting attack that auto-attacks on repeat. All you do is move your character around, dodging the endless swarms of enemies constantly chasing you. Don't let that simplicity fool you though, as the game gets very challenging. You level up your character by picking up XP shards from killed enemies, which allow you to choose from one of 3 upgrades whenever you level up. The upgrades consist of new weapons that also auto-attack, as well as passive buffs like faster movement speed, for example. Every time you die, you're able to spend coins you collected in your previous runs on new characters or permanent upgrades in the shop that help you on future runs. If you're looking for a deceptively tense top-down combat game that'll have you weaving through enemies, then I recommend Vampire Survivors. Those were the top 10 free action games on itch.io you didn't know about. I'll have my playlist of free itch.io games you don't know about linked in the description, as well as my videos about free action games on Steam. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe to keep up with this ongoing series.